You arrive late just as the sun begins to set over the terracotta rooftops of ancient Rome. The sky is streaked in dusty pink and orange, and the city buzzes with the echoes of cartwheels and gossip. You've been invited, no summoned, to a private dinner party in the home of a Roman elite. A senator, someone close to Caesar himself. Your sandals scuff across the worn stone as you approach the towering entrance. Two slaves in tunics open the bronze-inlaid door without a word. Inside, the smell hits you first. It's a thick, confusing aroma, something between incense and pickled fish. You hesitate on the marble threshold, blinking at the sudden coolness of the atrium, and then you're nudged forward by a slave who gently but insistently gestures for you to move. You step in. This is not what you expected. The walls are covered in frescoes, half-faded gods with wide eyes and suspiciously smug grins. A shallow pool ripples in the center of the atrium, reflecting the flickering oil lamps above. The water smells faintly of roses or maybe mildew. A parrot squawks from a golden cage in the corner, screaming something that sounds like Marcus No over and over. A joke, a memory. You're not alone, of course. Other guests have arrived, lounging or pacing nervously. They're wrapped in stiff togas like human burritos, speaking low Latin, with flourishes of fake laughter. Everyone is trying to look casual. No one is relaxed. A young boy offers you a drink, diluted wine in a clay cup, spiced with something unfamiliar. You sip. It tastes like regret and boiled cinnamon. You smile anyway. Then someone calls your name, badly mispronounced, and gestures for you to follow. You're led down a hallway painted with scenes of Bacchus reclining with a dozen goats and twice as many women. At one point, you swear the eyes on the wall move. Probably your imagination. Hopefully. At the end of the hall, two larger slaves wait beside an antechamber. One holds a bundle of folded cloth. The other gestures at your tunic. Ah, you're to change. Now. You're directed behind a silk curtain. Your old clothes are removed, folded, and concerningly taken away. You're left bare in a room that smells like almond oil and sweaty ambition. The folded cloth is a fresh toga. Except it's not just a toga, it's 3 layers pinned with something dangerously sharp. You try to put it on. You fail. Someone eventually helps. You're grateful. You're humiliated. And then there's oil. A third servant appears carrying a bronze bowl. Without a word, they pour warm oil over your arms and begin to rub it into your skin. Not a massage, this is more like a ritual cleansing. Or maybe a hazing. Your skin gleams like a rotisserie chicken. You're now ready. You exit slippery and overdressed into the main triclinium, the dining room. It's shaped like a horseshoe, the walls painted in impossible blues and violent reds. At the center, low tables are piled with strange foods. Around them, couches await you. No chairs. You're expected to recline, like a decadent shrimp. A steward directs you to your assigned couch, left elbow-down, legs stretched out sideways. You attempt this, gracelessly ending in a half collapse. A cushion slides out. No one helps. You're already sweating again. The host makes his entrance. He's a large man with a shrill laugh and a tunic that costs more than your family. He gestures grandly. "Welcome," he booms. "Tonight we eat as gods do." You're not convinced that's a good thing. The slaves bring out the first course, small dishes of pickled vegetables, olives, and hard-boiled eggs covered in honey. The eggs are gray, the olives look suspiciously shriveled. Still, everyone begins to eat. You nibble. The egg tastes like regret. The olive bites back. The honey is too sweet and hides something sour underneath. You're not sure if you're allergic or just unprepared. A man beside you grunts approvingly and wipes his mouth on the back of your toga. You decide not to comment. The host raises his goblet. "To appetite, to survival," you mutter under your breath. Across the table, a slave spills wine and is slapped. No one flinches. Another guest picks up a small dish and sniffs deeply. "Ah, garum," he says reverently. "You've heard of it, fermented fish sauce. Romans put it on everything." Your stomach turns preemptively. Then the music begins. A girl with painted eyes plucks a cithara in the corner. The strings are out of tune. It doesn't matter. No one is listening. You're handed more wine, again diluted and perfumed. This time it tastes faintly of violets and black pepper. You drink it anyway. You may need it later. You realize something important. This is only the beginning, and you're not sure you're going to make it. You haven't even finished choking down the strange honeyed egg when a gong sounds from somewhere above your head. The sound vibrates through your chest like a warning. Servants file in with brass trays, their faces as blank as stone. And that's when things start to get personal. You're motioned again to rise. Another room, another course. No, you're directed through a side passage into what seems to be a bath chamber, but without the bath. The walls are warm to the touch, the floor slightly damp. The air smells heavily of oil herbs and something metallic like scraped coins. 2 new slaves appear larger than the last pair, and this time they don't ask. Your toga is removed before you can protest gently but efficiently, and once again you're completely, utterly naked. You begin to suspect the Roman elite just really enjoy catching guests off guard. One of the slaves holds up a curved bronze tool strigil you remember. You'd read that Romans scraped their bodies instead of using soap. You hadn't expected to be the one scraped. The oil goes on first again, warm, thick, and excessive. It runs down your back in slow streams and pools around your ankles. The slave does not slow down as he moves to your arms' legs, even between your toes. Then the scraping begins, long, firm strokes that drag the oil, sweat, and possibly your last shred of dignity into a shallow bronze basin. The strigil catches slightly against a callus on your heel. You wince. No one cares. Another servant dusts your now oiled skin with crushed lavender and something gritty salt maybe. It smells better, but now you're shiny and crusted, like an expensive ham. When it's done, your new toga is presented finer than the last. Whiter, stiffer, starched within an inch of its life. It's carefully wrapped around you, cinched just tightly enough to restrict full breathing. You look down. It's not even a full outfit. There's no undergarment. Nothing between you and Roman air but ceremonial dignity. As you're escorted back to the triclinium, you wonder if this is still technically appetizer territory. And then you notice the laughter. You re-enter the room to the sound of high-pitched mocking giggles, not directed at you, thank Jupiter, but at a poor young man who has just collapsed into his own plate of olives. A woman nearby, elegantly bored, fans herself and mumbles, "Too much Falernian wine too early." Your place has been refreshed, new cloth, a slightly repositioned cushion, and a fresh cup of wine. You recline again, better this time, and try to ignore the oil still lingering in your ears. And then it arrives. Garum. You'd hoped it was a myth, or at least a minor ingredient. But no, here it is in all its pungent glory. A whole bowl of it passed around like holy water. You lean in. You instantly regret it. Imagine anchovies left in the sun, lovingly fermented in clay jars for months, then liquefied. Add herbs, add thyme, add evil. That's garum, the Roman ketchup. They drizzle it over hard cheese, over figs, even over fish. You watch in slow horror as a man beside you adds it to milk. The smell is now everywhere, on the plates, in the air, in your soul. You sip your wine to mask it, but now the wine tastes like regretful vinegar. You glance across the room. A guest, older, grizzled, one eyebrow permanently raised, is spooning garum into his mouth directly. No food, just sauce. A younger man nearby whispers, "He claims it cured his gout." You raise your brows. Historians still debate whether garum had any medicinal properties, he adds, as if quoting a scroll. He then sneezes violently and dunks a piece of melon into his wine. No one flinches. The next tray is brought in, a strange assortment of skewered meats. You lean forward, stomach uneasy. The host grins. Ah, fieldfare and songbirds. You're not sure what fieldfare is, but it sounds like something that should be flying, not fried. You take one tiny bite. It's crunchy, bones and all. Apparently, you're not supposed to spit anything out. You try to smile. Then a platter is placed near your elbow and the room quiets slightly. The host leans forward, voice low and dramatic. A delicacy. The lid is lifted. Stuffed dormice. At first you think they're little pastries, plump and golden, dotted with herbs. Then you see the tiny paws, the closed eyes. One even has a tiny tooth visible, caught in a final nibble. They're stuffed with minced pork pepper and pine nuts. You're told they were fattened in clay jars like living sausages. A slave places one on your plate. You stare. Someone clears their throat. You realize you're supposed to try it. You cut into it. The skin is crisp, the inside meaty. The taste rich, salty, unexpectedly nutty. Not bad, you think, if you forget what it is, if you ignore the paw still resting on your plate. A man across from you licks his fingers. Best ones come from the countryside, he says. Wild ones taste too. Gamey. You sip your wine again, still violet, still diluted, still terrible. And now you notice something worse. The table is starting to fill up. This was just the beginning. You've eaten 3 things and already want to lie down. But more plates come, more meat, more sauces, more wine. You glance at the parrot again, still cawing Marcus No from the corner. You begin to understand what it meant. Your belly is full, sort of. Not in the comforting, satisfied way you're used to, more like confused. Like your stomach is a small animal that's been handed a scroll written in 6 different dialects and told to make sense of it before sundown. The servants move quietly now, efficient and tireless, clearing away the dormice, the half-eaten songbirds, the bones. One of them accidentally tips a dish. It crashes to the marble floor and shatters. A collective breath holds. The host glances over lazily and waves a hand. "Break another, make it symmetrical," he says, chuckling. Everyone laughs a bit too hard. You, on the other hand, remain frozen. You were already on edge, but now your wine feels heavier. Maybe it's the combination. Maybe it's the stress. Or maybe it's just the natural consequence of eating a mammal that once slept curled up in a walnut shell. Then the next course arrives, and the mood shifts. Flamingo tongue. It comes served on silver platters, pinkish glistening, laid out like delicate petals around a dark center. The room goes oddly quiet as guests sit up straighter, well as straight as one can sit, while reclining and lean in. The host speaks with reverence. A gift from the East. Their tongues are sweeter than their songs. You're not sure who first decided to eat a flamingo tongue, but you'd like a word with them. Several, in fact. Most involving disbelief and maybe light physical shaking. You're handed a piece. It's warm, soft, strangely slick. You hesitate. The woman next to you leans over and whispers, "Chew quickly." Then she bites into hers like it's a grape. You follow. It's oddly gelatinous, not fishy, not bird-like, not even particularly meaty. Just soft and a little salty with a metallic aftertaste. The spices help. So does the wine. You swallow. You're still alive. Across the table, a minor poet is reciting a short piece dedicated to the flamingo, waxing poetic about the birds that drink the sun and bleed beauty. You find yourself nodding more to stay awake than in agreement. Then, something strange happens. A man 2 places down begins laughing. Not a chuckle, a full belly laugh, loud, booming, and slightly unhinged. Everyone freezes. Remember the last time he gasps between howls? When Lucius tried to eat 2 at once and his teeth fell out, the host roars. The entire table collapses into laughter. Someone wipes tears from their eyes with a peacock feather. The woman beside you chuckles softly, then downs another gulp of wine. The servers return, but not with food this time. They bring entertainment. First, a pair of dwarves wearing silver helmets appear, carrying sticks topped with bells. They begin to dance awkward synchronized hops while a flute plays a slightly out-of-tune melody. You're not sure if you're supposed to laugh, clap, or look away. Then come the acrobats. 2 girls barely older than children enter in sheer linen, their arms dusted with glittering powder. They walk on their hands across the tile floor, then tumble into perfectly silent flips. One balances a small amphora on her foot while upside down. The room applauds politely. It's impressive. It's also disorienting. You're stuffed slightly tipsy, confused by the bird tongue, and now watching children walk on their hands while someone throws flower petals from the ceiling. Then the flute stops abruptly. A new sound begins, a deep, resonant drumbeat. It echoes through the room like a heartbeat. A slave enters with a tray. It's not food. It's a basin. And beside him another guest leans over and vomits into it. Loudly, violently. You gasp. No one else does. In fact, someone claps. Another voice says cheerfully, "He paced himself better than last time." You turn to your neighbor wide-eyed. She shrugs. Standard practice. We eat until we can't, then make room. More polite than saying no. You stare at the basin. The smell hits you. You stare at your wine. You wonder if anyone would notice if you crawled under the couch and pretended to be dead. The host is grinning. It's not a real feast until someone gives something back. You want to say something, anything, but your mouth is dry. Your stomach is in revolt. Your brain is considering civil war. Then a slave appears at your side holding a bowl, a boiled egg. It's small, perfect, warm in your hand, and suspicious. You glance around. Other guests are holding eggs too. Some tap them lightly, others crack them without hesitation. One woman drops hers on the floor and it bounces. Another breaks hers open and yells, "Oh, Jupiter's teeth! Yours feels soft." You crack it. It's raw. You look up. Everyone is watching. The host cackles. The egg game always a surprise. You win if it's hard-boiled. You win even more if it isn't. Historians still debate whether this was a common Roman party game or just a cruel tradition among the elite. But in that moment, you're part of the game. You quickly set the egg down, sip your wine, and pretend this is fine. Because it has to be. Because the night is young. Because you are not allowed to leave. The egg sits on your plate like a dare. Viscous whites trickle down the cracks in its shell, pooling beside a wilted fig. You try to ignore it. You fail. A hand reaches over and plucks the egg from your plate. It's the poet, the one who wrote the Flamingo sonnet. He lifts it to his mouth and slurps it down like a raw oyster. Then he winks. You question everything you've ever believed about art. The host raises his goblet again. "Let the gods be praised," he says, voice thick with wine. "And let Caesar be greater than them all." There's a half-hearted cheer. Someone knocks over a jug. You clap. You have no idea why. Another course arrives, paraded in like a trophy. This one smells better cinnamon, dates, roasted nuts. But then you realize it's fish. Sweet, sticky fish. 2 whole mullets grilled and glazed with honey and vinegar, garnished with raisins. One of them still has a decorative toothpick in its mouth, like it's trying to smile. You take a bite. It tastes like dessert and low tide. Beside you, a man in military armor off-duty you hope launches into a speech about Neptune's generosity. The sea provides for all, he says, waving a fork around dangerously, unless you insult it. Then it takes. Someone nods solemnly. That's why I never eat eel. You blink slowly, chew carefully, and reach for your wine. It's been changed again. This time it's cloudy and warm with a smell like roasted pine. You sip. You regret. A second goblet is placed beside it. The liquid inside is paler, thinner. "Oxymel," the servant mutters. "For digestion. It's vinegar and honey, and it tastes like disappointment had a baby with cough syrup." Still you drink. You are surviving this. Barely. The next moment brings another performance, this one quieter. A young boy enters, carrying a harp too big for him. He plucks at it gently while whispering a story about Apollo and a jealous goose. You're not sure if it's mythology or something he made up. The guests nod, eyes unfocused. One man weeps softly. Then a familiar aroma cuts through the wine fog. Garum. Again. You flinch. A plate of boiled cabbage with fish sauce is set in front of you. The cabbage is gray-green, glistening, and very dead. You attempt to push it aside. A servant gently pushes it back. Apparently, it's rude not to finish your course. A woman across the room lifts her spoon and says, "I swear by Vesta this helped my sister conceive." Someone else mutters, "Or caused the miscarriage." You don't ask. As the cabbage war wages silently on your plate, another guest, a lean man with ink-stained fingers, leans toward you. "Do you lean Stoic?" he asks, "or Epicurean?" You blink. "I lean full." He chuckles. "Philosophically, I mean. Reason or pleasure?" You mumble something neutral about moderation. He narrows his eyes. "Ah, the coward's path." And just like that, the room catches fire, not literally, though you wouldn't be shocked at this point, but verbally. Voices rise, fingers point. The philosopher you just offended accidentally is now in a full debate with a merchant, a senator, and a man who hasn't stopped eating since the appetizers. The topic spirals: virtue, death, free will, cheese. You try to follow. You fail. Someone slams a cup down. The gods themselves submit to logos. Another retorts, the gods themselves submit to appetite. A third person burps loudly. This is apparently a valid counterpoint. The host claps with delight. Argue with your mouths full. It makes the truth more delicious. No one laughs this time. You return to your fish. It's cold now. The raisins look ashamed. Suddenly the music shifts. A faster rhythm. A woman enters in golden robes trailing ribbons. She begins to dance, not sensually, but mechanically, like she's counting steps in her head. Her face is painted with stiff lines, her eyes expressionless. Everyone watches in silence. She twirls once, twice, then collapses to the floor. Applause erupts. She's carried out. You don't know if it was part of the act. Then comes a new dish, small cakes round and flat, spiced with pepper and coriander. Finally, dessert. You bite in. They're dry, so dry, you cough. Someone hands you a fig. You nod grateful until you realize it's stuffed with anchovies. The man beside you shrugs. Dessert's just a concept. You begin to feel woozy, not sick exactly, just displaced, like you're floating slightly above your body. The smells, the flavors, the sounds all swirl together in a slow, exhausting haze. You look around. Someone is asleep. Someone else is braiding their neighbor's hair. The parrot has stopped shouting. Even the frescoes on the wall seem to have softened the painted eyes, less judgmental now. The host rises, and now he declares the bread. You sigh with relief. Bread. Simple. Safe. A basket is placed on the table. You reach in. It's a brick. Well, not literally, but close. The loaf is round, flat, and dense enough to survive a siege. You bite in and hear a crack. You're unsure if it came from the bread or your own tooth. Across the room, a man is using his bread to knock olives off his plate. Efficient, at least. The woman next to you whispers, "We keep one in every household, in case of emergencies or invaders." You believe her. You try another bite. You do not succeed. The bread goes back on your plate. You will honor it with respectful distance. You've survived another course, but dinner is far from over. You stare at the bread like it might come back to life and attack. It sits there round and smug, the hardest object you've bitten since that one time you dared chew Roman currency out of curiosity. You push it to the edge of your plate, pretending it's part of the decor. A servant appears and silently replaces your cup with a fresh pour of wine. This one is darker, richer, less perfumed. You raise an eyebrow. Maybe they've stopped experimenting. You take a sip. Wrong. This one's been infused with pitch. Yes, tree sap. It clings to your tongue like bitterness from a failed relationship. You glance around for a reaction, but everyone else is nodding in approval. Then a whisper to your left, "Try the oysters." You look down. A small platter has been slid in front of you without warning. Raw oysters dressed with garum, sprinkled with chopped herbs, glistening under the torchlight like jewels from a swamp. A hand reaches over, thin, calloused. A slave, perhaps one of the cooks. She leans in close. "Don't," she whispers again, eyes flicking sideways. They've been sitting out since midday. You freeze. She disappears. You consider the oysters. The host is watching. So are the guests nearby. One slurps an oyster noisily and lets the juice dribble down his chin. Another pokes one with a bronze toothpick as if testing for venom. You pick one up, you raise it to your lips, and then you sneeze, hard. The oyster launches from your hand and lands on the mosaic floor with a wet slap. The entire table stares. A moment of silence. Then the host bursts into laughter. Zeus himself couldn't have aimed better. Relief floods your body. The tension breaks. Someone toasts to your sinuses. You're forgiven, possibly praised. You leave the oyster where it fell. Across the room, a senator reclines heavily, fanning himself with a wax tablet. His cheeks are flushed, his toga rumpled. He mutters, "Fever dreams, that's all this is." Flamingo tongues and singing fish. You're not sure if he's speaking to you or the mosaic of Neptune beside him. Then, with the casualness of a man describing the weather, he says, "My wife tried to poison me once. Used figs. Too sweet. You blink. Did it work?" He smiles. "I'm here, aren't I?" Before you can reply, he drops a fig into his wine and downs the whole thing. You're no longer sure where the edge of the meal ends and the edge of sanity begins. The next course is wheeled in, yes, wheeled. A small cart covered in gold leaf, pushed by a servant whose arms tremble under its weight. On it, a large silver tray, and on the tray, a whole roast hare, propped upright, front paws, posed like it's begging for mercy. Its eyes have been replaced with dates. Its mouth holds a sprig of mint. There are stuffed grapes shoved into its belly cavity, and someone has painted a faint blush on its cheeks. You are for a moment unsure whether to eat it or apologize to it. The host claps his hands. "Symbolism," he shouts. "Rebirth through fire." You lean over to your neighbor and whisper, "Is this a seasonal thing?" She shrugs. "Sometimes it's a peacock. A servant slices the hare and offers you a piece. You take it because refusing at this point would be the true crime. The meat is tender, surprisingly good, seasoned with cumin, coriander, and something sharp, maybe vinegar or lemon rind. The fruit gives it sweetness, The guilt gives it weight. You chew slowly. It's the most coherent thing you've eaten all evening. The wine returns yet another version, this time mixed with seawater. You can taste the salt, the bitterness. Somehow it makes the hair taste braver, as if it knew its fate and accepted it nobly. You think about writing that down. You don't have a stylus. And then laughter, loud, shrieking, guttural. The parrot, no, the guests. A slave is on the floor. He's dropped a plate. Again. This one had truffles on it. Rare imported. Expensive. The host stares. Everyone goes silent. The slave begins to beg. You can't understand all of it, some mixture of Latin and panic, but the tone is universal. A plea for mercy. The host smiles. You tense. And then he throws his goblet. It smashes on the floor beside the servant. Let the wine mix with the food, he declares, as it does in the stomach. Everyone cheers. You don't know if that counts as forgiveness or performance art. A moment later, another servant enters with a jug and silently refills everyone's cups. You notice her hands shake slightly. A guest leans over, eyes bloodshot. They're actors, he mutters. The host hires them. Real servants don't drop plates. You blink. So this is part of the show you don't ask. You sip your seawater wine and nod as though you've always known. Then someone begins to sing. A single reedy voice, thin and high like a boy pretending to be a girl. The song is slow, lilting, tragic. Something about a shipwreck and a goat that saved a sailor. You're not sure. But the room goes quiet. One guest closes his eyes and lets a tear run down his cheek. Another uses the moment to vomit again. Different basin. You feel full, not just in the belly, but in the soul. Saturated, glutted, and still the meal continues. You're reclining deeper now. Not by choice, your spine has surrendered. The cushion beneath you is no longer soft, but simply present. Your legs are numb, your mouth sticky, your senses dulled. Somewhere in the distance, the parrot croaks again. Marcus, no. You understand him now. The next course arrives before you even realize the last one was cleared. A servant lays down a silver platter with ceremony, and you brace yourself. You've learned by now that nothing ever arrives without complications. This time, it's snails. Big ones. They glisten under a layer of oil and parsley, tucked into their own shells like smug little secrets. They're lined up in rows each with a tiny ivory pick plunged into the opening. A guest across from you groans with pleasure. Raised in milk for a week, he murmurs, the truly decadent way. You nod as though you're deeply impressed and not actively having a moral crisis. You spear one with the pick. It resists, then slides free with a slick little pop. The texture is exactly what you'd expect from something that lives in its own slime. The taste, not bad, earthy, garlicky. It could be worse. You swallow with a quick sip of wine, another new batch, this one sweet and infused with rose petals. A man nearby adds salt to his snail, then sugar. He stirs it with the pick and slurps it like pudding. You turn away. Then you hear a hiss. It's faint like steam escaping from a bathhouse vent, but it's coming from the corner of the room. You lean up. A bronze censer has been placed on a pedestal, and something inside it is smoking. The smell is unfamiliar, not unpleasant. A mix of myrrh, frankincense, and something sharply herbal. You ask someone what it is. Crocodile dung, the answer comes. You stare. Dried, of course. Burned for purification. Cleopatra used it as sunscreen, or maybe contraception. Historians still debate. Of course they do. You shift uncomfortably on your cushion. The air is getting thicker. Sweet, smoky animal. Someone begins to cough. Another raises their cup and toasts to fertility and not catching fire. The host laughs and waves the smoke toward himself as if it's perfume. A new dish is placed in front of you, a porridge of sorts. Barley dates, crushed almonds sprinkled with rose petals and cinnamon. It's warm and gooey, and for once almost soothing. Then you bite down on something hard. You spit it into your hand. A pearl. No, just a bit of uncrushed pit, or a trick. You glance around and notice others doing the same. One guest produces a tooth, his own. He holds it up proudly. Second one this month. The host roars with approval. You decide to chew less enthusiastically. Then the games begin. The slaves return not with food but with dice. Carved bone, ivory, and crystal are tossed into bowls. Wagers are whispered. One man loses his sandal. Another offers his wife's necklace. Someone bets a particularly fat sausage from the next course. You're handed a pair of dice and a small bowl. You shake, you roll, snake eyes. The table gasps. A man gasps. The parrot gasps. A woman claps her hands. That means you must make a toast. You clear your throat to staying alive. The room laughs. The host bangs the table. Best toast of the evening. You're poured more wine. You've lost count of how many kinds you've had. Your cup smells like a garden and a battlefield all at once. Then it arrives. A small, steaming clay pot. The lid is lifted. Inside what looks like pudding but smells like awful. A guest leans over. "Pig's brain custard," he says reverently, "with cinnamon." You pause. Why cinnamon to fool the senses? You dig in because at this point resistance is just theater. The texture is creamy. Too creamy. The flavor is complex and vaguely terrifying. You try not to think about how it was harvested, or when. The custard goes down with effort. You're congratulated anyway. Someone offers you a sprig of mint to cleanse the palate. You chew it mechanically like a goat. Across the room a slave stumbles. Not drops something, just stumbles. And it's enough. The host stands. "Enough food," he shouts. "Let us honor the gods." You don't know if this means more food or something worse. Turns out ritual. Small bowls of wine are passed around. You're expected to pour a bit on the floor. You do. The floor smells like a failed vineyard. The host chants something in Greek. Everyone else mumbles. A flute plays a single shrill note. A man spins in place until he falls over. You stare at your plate. A new one has appeared while you were distracted. Fruit. Finally, something safe. Then you look closer. The grapes are stuffed with pine nuts. The figs are fried. And the apples are hollow. You pick one up. It's filled with cheese. You set it down and let your hand rest on your stomach. It feels like a protest is imminent. Then a sudden breeze. The window shutters are open. The air is cool, fresh. For one brief quiet moment everything slows. The torches flicker. A flute plays again softly this time. Someone hums. You lean back and breathe. You've survived 6 courses. You think. There's a subtle shift in the room now, like the belly of the evening has begun to groan. Some guests are reclining more deeply into their cushions, their arms draped over their eyes. A few are absent entirely, presumably off vomiting politely in marble-lined privacy. A servant glides past carrying a tray of cloths, scented with hyssop, offering one to each guest. You press it to your face. It helps. Barely. You look around and notice that the lighting has changed. Fewer torches now. The flame light flickers softer, casting the frescoes into stranger shapes. A painted Bacchus on the wall seems to grin wider than before. Then a clatter, a shout. You turn just in time to see a platter flip in midair, trailing a comet tail of sauce and small roasted birds. It crashes to the floor. The birds bounce. Your heart skips. This wasn't a planned accident. The room goes quiet. The host stands slowly, eyes locked on the trembling servant who dropped it. A young man, barely more than a boy, pale and breathless. The host says nothing, just walks over, kneels down, and picks up one of the birds. A quail, maybe. He bites into it, crunching through bones. He swallows. He claps the boy on the shoulder. "Delicious," he says. "Next time fly slower." Laughter erupts, nervous, relieved. You realize you've stopped breathing. Then the next dish arrives, ushered in like a visiting noble. A whole peacock. Its feathers are still attached, fanned out behind the roasted carcass like a crown. The skin glistens gold. Its beak has been lacquered and painted red. Its eyes are rubies. Possibly real ones. Possibly just beetles. You're not going to check. The host gestures dramatically, a symbol of immortality and indigestion. The table laughs. The peacock is sliced. The meat is dark, richer than chicken, gamier than duck. It's been soaked in myrtle juice, sweetened with dates, and served over a layer of mashed chestnuts. You eat because you're expected to. You swallow because you must. The guest next to you raises a glass. To eternal beauty and short memories. You nod. You don't ask. Then a servant whispers something to the host. He smiles. Ah yes, the interlude. The music cuts. A new performer enters. You expect another acrobat. Instead, it's a man in a white tunic and sandals carrying a scroll. He unrolls it, clears his throat. He begins to read. A legal case from 30 years ago, involving 2 neighbors, a disputed olive tree, and a goat. He reads slowly, every clause, every counter-argument, every rebuttal. You glance around. No one seems bothered. One guest even nods thoughtfully. It goes on, and on. At one point, the reader stops to sip wine and continues reading with a faint burp between paragraphs. You drift. You return. He's still reading. He finally ends with a dramatic pause. And so the magistrate ruled in favor of Lucius, though the goat had already eaten the tree. Polite applause. The host claps. Law is the foundation of the republic. You clap too. You have no idea why. Another servant brings in a small bowl of sauce. Just sauce. No explanation. Just oily reddish paste with something floating in it. Maybe peppercorns. Maybe not. The guest across from you dips a finger and licks it. Fermented goat spleen. You pretend to cough and don't ask questions. A man at the far end of the table is telling a story now, loudly, gesturing wildly. Something about a dinner where a senator's wig caught fire. He mimics the scream. Everyone laughs. Then he adds, and no one helped. We were all too full. A small dog trots across the floor. You didn't even realize there was a dog. It sniffs a dropped grape, sneezes, and walks away. The mood turns philosophical again. Time is circular, says a woman in emerald green silk. Like this table. But tables aren't circular, someone responds. Exactly. Everyone murmurs agreement. The host nods. The wine is working, and it is. You've lost track of time. Of courses. Of logic. A new dish is served. This one mushrooms. Not the friendly kind. Thick black mushrooms with curled edges soaked in vinegar and lark's blood. Yes, lark's blood. The host insists it's ceremonial. You take a small bite. It tastes like iron and damp bark. You chew slowly, then stop. The woman beside you whispers, "One of the emperors died from mushrooms, you know." You nod. Or maybe that was the plan. Historians still debate. A man lets out a deep sigh. "I miss garum," he says wistfully. You blink. You don't. Then comes a plate of boiled carrots shaped into tiny fish dyed blue with crushed indigo. You eat one. It tastes like a carrot trying to escape its identity. Someone claps. Artistry. Then another guest stands and begins to recite poetry again. This time it's about socks. Roman socks. Woolen, uncomfortable, always damp. The crowd loves it. Someone falls asleep mid-applause. A servant brings you a towel soaked in mint water. You wipe your face. It feels like being born again. Then you glance at your plate. It's full again. You didn't even see it happen. More food. Always more. The plate in front of you has changed, and not for the better. It now holds a gelatinous cube, wobbling, translucent, and suspiciously purple. Inside it something resembling a walnut, or a toe. You can't be sure. You poke it with your fork. It jiggles menacingly. "What is it?" you whisper. "Pig's trotter jelly," someone replies. "Suspended in grape extract. It's the texture of power." You don't want to know what that means. You do know that swallowing it will require more courage than anything you've faced tonight. You glance to your right. Your neighbor has inhaled hers already and is licking the spoon. "It's best if you don't think about it," she advises cheerfully. You believe her. You close your eyes. You take the bite. It hits your tongue like a cold, rubbery handshake. Slippery, savory, sweet, and jiggling all at once. You chew, or at least you try. The jelly evades your teeth, bouncing away like it knows it doesn't belong here. Finally, you force it down. The walnut toe stays lodged in your throat a moment longer than you'd prefer, then slides down with the help of another gulp of whatever this round of wine is, spiced, acidic, and heavy with cloves. You set the spoon down carefully. You've survived worse. You'll survive this, probably. The torches flicker lower again. You hear the distant hum of a string instrument, 3 notes plucked repeatedly, the kind of music that makes time feel slow. Maybe it is. The host stands suddenly. I believe he says dramatically, "It's time for the test." The guests murmur. Someone claps. Another person groans softly. "What test, you ask?" Your neighbor grins. The sardine game. You're immediately concerned. Slaves bring out small wooden trays, each with a single fish laid across it, tiny, oily, and glistening. A sardine pickled to perfection, or past it resting atop a bed of raw leek and mustard seeds. The host explains the rules. You must place the fish in your mouth whole. Hold it. No chewing, no swallowing. For as long as you can endure. The winner, he booms, gets the olive crown. And immunity from the next course. You don't know what the next course is. But you're already thinking of folding. Still, a sardine appears in front of you. It stares up glassy-eyed as if it knew this moment would come. You glance around. Everyone else is doing it. Even the parrot seems invested. You raise it. You slide it in. It's cold, slimy, salty beyond reason. Your eyes water immediately. The texture is like licking the inside of a rusty trumpet filled with anchovy paste. You breathe through your nose. You do not panic. You do not scream. Someone across the room gags audibly. A woman bites hers and half shrugs and disqualifies herself. "Worth it," she says, chewing loudly. The seconds drag. Your mouth fills with dread and brine, and then the host claps. Enough, who still holds the fish. Only 3 hands rise. Yours is not one of them. You swallow with desperation. It burns all the way down. Somewhere your dignity lies floating belly up. Still you cheer for the winner. He's crowned with a crude wreath of olive branches and fig leaves. He bows deeply. His breath could kill. A moment of pause follows. The musicians return harp and flute something soft and circular. You feel a moment of peace. Maybe it's over. It is not, because now the eel. A long, glistening one, grilled whole, and presented in an elegant S-shaped eyes-intact mouth, open garnished with peppercorns and honey glaze. It smells sweet burnt and slightly threatening. The man across from you smiles. They're sacred to the Nile. You nod blankly. The eel is sliced and plated. A servant warns you watch the bones. Then he whispers, "But chew the skin, it's the best part." You take a piece avoiding the head. It's rich, earthy, surprisingly fatty. The skin does have a satisfying crunch, but there's also a chewiness that reminds you of regret. You chase it with more wine. By now, the flavors all blur together. Cinnamon vinegar fish guts. It's all one long, oily symphony. The host raises his goblet. A toast to excess, to luxury, to the empire. Everyone cheers. A few burp. One man falls asleep mid-toast, goblet still raised. Then come the riddles. A servant reads them from a scroll. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at midday, and 3 in the evening? Someone mutters, "My uncle," after wine. Laughter. Another, "I am taken from a mine and shut in a wooden case." Salt, someone guesses. No garum, incorrect. It was lead. The crowd boos. You're too full to think, too dazed to answer. The wine, the eel, the sardine, the jelly, it all floats inside you like a drunken sea. The air is thick again. The crock-dung incense has returned. And then, because of course, comes a new dish, boiled cow udder. You blink. It's pale puffy, sliced into squares, and served with mint sauce. Someone says, a delicacy among the older patricians. Improves virility. You don't need virility. You need a nap. Still, a piece is placed on your plate. You poke it. It jiggles more than the pig's trotter jelly. You bite. It tastes like warm milk and chalk. You chew. You chew again. You swallow. You survive. And just when you think it's over, a bell rings. A final platter is presented. Caesar's personal favorite, says the host. The lid is lifted. Camel heel stew. Thick gelatinous floating in saffron broth. Someone murmurs that it was shipped in from the east. Another guest cries softly into a napkin. You take one bite. You black out for a moment, just a moment. When you come to, you're still at the table, still chewing, still alive, but only just. You're not sure what hour it is anymore, if hours even exist in this room. The walls feel closer now, the torch is dimmer, the laughter slower. Some guests have vanished entirely. Their couches vacated and crumpled like they simply dissolved into the meal. The camel heel stew sits uneaten on many plates. Even the boldest diners are starting to hesitate. A man across from you is chewing a piece so slowly, it's unclear whether he's savoring or suffering. He pauses, looks up and says, "It's like chewing boiled belt." You nod because there's nothing else to say. The host rises again steadily this time, as if he's been preparing for something serious. He clears his throat and everyone quiets. Now he says, "We honor the spirits of the house." Servants enter with small brass cups none match and begin placing them in front of each guest. You're handed one. The liquid inside is clear thick and smells faintly of licorice and despair. Aniseed and honeyed sap, the guest beside you whispers. Also possibly goat tears. It depends on the house. You raise your cup in tandem with the others. To the lares and penates, the host intones naming the household gods. Everyone drinks. You take the smallest sip possible. It coats your tongue like melted candle wax and clings to your throat with alarming determination. Another round of incense is lit something muskier now. A servant walks the perimeter of the room trailing the smoke behind him. You try not to cough. The frescoes on the wall seem to shimmer again, especially the one of Mercury stealing sausages. Then out of nowhere someone screams, not a panicked scream, more of a celebratory yell. A man on the far end of the room stands triumphantly, arms raised, holding something above his head. A radish, huge purple bulbous. "Found it," he cries. The hidden root applause erupts. You turn to your neighbor. "What's happening?" She smiles. "It's tradition." They hide a rare vegetable in the table arrangements. Whoever finds it gets to demand a song. Of course, the man with the radish points dramatically at a lute player near the door. "You, serenade me with the fall of Numantia." The musician groans but complies. The song begins. Slow, mournful about betrayal, starvation, and Roman victory. Half the room swoons, the other half sleeps. Meanwhile, the next dish is placed before you. You think it's a pie. You think wrong. It's a pastry shell, yes, but filled with small birds, entire ones, baked inside. Their beaks protrude slightly from the crust like tiny accusations. A guest beside you saws into it gleefully and spears a thrush with his knife. "You have to eat the bones," he says. "That's where the flavor is." You try a bite tentatively, delicately. The pastry is flaky and sweet. The bird inside is not. It crunches, pops, and dissolves into something metallic and rich. You chase it with wine that tastes of ash and plum. Do you know someone across the table says that Caesar once hosted a dinner where each course represented a constellation? You raise your brows. Really? Well, historians still debate that. But it sounds grand, doesn't it? It does. Another round of food arrives. This time lentils and lamprey. An odd pairing. The lentils are spiced with cumin and honey. The lamprey is boiled, sliced, and shaped into a coil like a sleeping serpent. A senator swirls his portion with his spoon. Lamprey was banned briefly. Too much lust, they said. You stare at the limp ring of fish on your plate. Nothing about it feels romantic. You push it aside. The host notices. Not a fan of eel's cousin, he calls out playfully. You smile weakly. Saving room. He winks. Wise. You feel seen and slightly threatened. Then comes a surprise, a gift. Servants hand out small boxes made of waxed wood, each tied with a ribbon of dyed linen. You untie yours. Inside a pressed fig, a strip of dried cheese, and what appears to be a small bronze charm in the shape of a spoon. A keepsake, your neighbor says, already sucking on the fig like it's candy, for remembering how full you were. You consider pocketing it. Then remember your toga has no pockets. You set it beside your plate. Someone toasts again. You've stopped counting. Then another announcement. The debate. You brace yourself. Two guests, one draped in violet, the other in pristine white stand. A servant hands them each a scroll. The debate begins. Topic: whether Saturn or Jupiter makes the better metaphor for the Republic. You don't follow every word. You do catch phrases like, and so like Saturn devouring his children, the Senate must sometimes devour its own. But Jupiter reigns with thunder and bureaucracy. As in the boiling of lentils, pressure produces virtue. They go back and forth. Voices rise. Someone throws a grape. Eventually the host declares a draw. Everyone cheers. You pretend you understood. Then to your horror, your plate is filled again. No one asked. It just happened. This time a cake. Finally, cake. But it's not sweet. It's made of cheese and barley spiced with cumin and pepper, topped with a hard glaze of honey that cracks like glass when your fork hits it. You take a bite. It crumbles like sand, tastes like regret, smells like warm stone. Still, it's cake. It's solid. It's an ending, maybe. You sit back. You breathe. But then the parrot screams again. Marcus, no. And you know deep in your bones there's still more to come. The parrot's voice echoes through the dimly lit chamber, a raspy omen that slices through the haze of wine and torch smoke. Marcus, no. Again and again. A chorus of warning from a bird who's clearly seen things. You consider taking its advice. You do not. A servant glides by, replacing your now crumbled cheesecake with something round and sticky. It glistens like tar in the candlelight. You squint. It's a date. Know a dozen dates pressed together, stuffed with nuts and crushed locust wings, then drenched in thick wine syrup. You stare at it for a moment. It stares back. Someone beside you murmurs, "The wings are for crunch." Of course they are. You take a bite. Crunch indeed. It's cloying, sweet, like fermented honey. The nuts are stale. The wings crackle unpleasantly, and the syrup sticks to your molars like ambition sticks to senators. You chew slowly, swallow carefully, sip the newest wine which tastes like old ink and pomegranate. You pretend this is fine, and then comes the storyteller. A woman draped in violet eyes outlined in kohl steps into the center of the room. She holds a scroll but doesn't look at it. She speaks slowly, rhythmically. A fisherman fell in love with the sea, she begins. But the sea loved no one, it pulled him under. And so his wife married his brother. The tale spirals into tragedy, revenge, and an inexplicable subplot involving cursed sea cucumbers. The guests listen entranced. You try to focus, but your stomach is staging a soft protest. It's not a revolution yet, just pamphlets. When the story ends, someone snaps their fingers. A tray appears instantly. Small blackened items sit atop it, hard to identify. Then someone announces roasted songbird tongues. The room murmurs with approval. You look at your portion. They resemble tiny petals charred delicate crisp. You eat one. It shatters like glass, vanishes like a sigh. It tastes fine, smoky, slightly metallic. A woman nearby licks her fingers, then says, "It reminds me of my childhood." You decide not to ask. The host rises again, this time with a jug. "I present the digestive," he announces. It's green. Bright green, thick as syrup. You're handed a small clay cup. It smells like fennel and sadness, made with 12 herbs, someone says proudly, and lizard bile. You raise a brow. Symbolic, he adds quickly. Not literal, probably. You drink. It burns. First your throat, then your chest, then possibly your soul. It tastes like a medicinal fire. You immediately hiccup, which causes the parrot to scream again. Marcus, no, a man claps, someone else toasts to your survival. Then, for reasons not explained, a curtain is pulled back to reveal a small indoor garden. Not a pleasant one. Just 3 sad olive trees in large pots under a roof that leaks slightly. A man in a tunic walks in and begins pruning them. That's all. Just pruning. No explanation. The host watches proudly. A symbol, he says, of controlled growth. You think it's a metaphor. You also think everyone is just too full to argue. Then someone starts a slow clap. The gardener bows. The curtain closes, and dessert continues. A silver dish arrives piled with snow, actual snow from the mountains drenched in fruit syrup and rosewater. Finally, something cold. You take a spoonful. It melts instantly, flooding your tongue with floral sweetness. You nearly weep. The guest beside you actually does. It's clean, she says. It tastes clean. You eat 3 spoonfuls before your teeth begin to hurt. A server approaches with a bowl of warm water and hands you a cloth. You wipe your face, your hands, your shame. Then a toast, another one. To the empire, the host bellows. Everyone repeats. To Caesar, everyone repeats. To whatever god oversees digestion, more laughter. Then the flute starts again, soft, circular, hypnotic. The candles are now nearly burnt down to stubs. Shadows stretch across the floor like tired limbs. You think maybe it's over. It is not. Because now the cheese. It arrives on a plank. 5 types. None of them familiar. One is oozing. One is rock hard. One is blue and ways cheese should not be. The others are somewhere between edible and threatening. You try a slice of the soft one. It smells like thunder. Tastes like moldy bread dipped in vinegar. The hard cheese cracks when you bite it. The guest next to you winks. The crunch is part of the charm. You leave the blue one alone. It pulses slightly. Then come the figs. Finally, something recognizably pleasant, but no. These figs are stuffed, not with nuts, with anchovies. You look around. Everyone is eating them like it's normal. You take one, you put it down, you reach for your wine, but even that's gone strange. The final cup is mulled wine, hot thick with notes of clove, coriander, and orange peel, and smoke. You sip, you cough. Your neighbor claps your back gently and says, "It grows on you." It does not. The air is heavier now, thicker, not just with smoke or food or wine, but with history, with ritual, with gravity. Someone lies down flat, someone else begins praying. The host raises a hand, and just like that, silence. He smiles. "One more course," he says, and your heart wilts like a leftover lettuce leaf. One more course, the host had said. You believed him, you poor hopeful fool. The torches sputter. The room smells of goat cheese, sweet rot, and pine tar. Someone is humming. Someone else is snoring quietly, rhythmically, face down on their cushion with a date stuck to their cheek. You can't feel your legs. You can't remember the taste of water. Then it arrives, the final dish, or so you're told. It's brought in not on a tray but in a small caged cart pushed by two servants whose expressions are unreadable. Inside a roasted boar's head, just the head. Its eyes are replaced with grapes. Its tusks are gilded. Its mouth holds an apple, which seems to be quietly regretting its life choices. The host gestures grandly. This, he says, is tradition. The caput senae, the head of the feast. A silence falls reverent and slightly fearful. The boar's head is set in the center of the table on a bed of herbs surrounded by pomegranate seeds, onion petals, and what you sincerely hope are not mousetails. A servant steps forward and carves a cheek. A thick slice, dark and glistening, falls to your plate with a soft thump. You stare. It smells incredible. Smoky, earthy, sweet, spiced with coriander, cumin, and bay leaf. You lift it. You bite. It melts. Your jaw slackens. The meat is soft, rich, and so tender it barely holds shape. Fat drips down your chin. You don't care. This is it. This is the best thing you've eaten all night. The guests murmur in agreement. Someone moans softly. Another licks their fingers and weeps openly. The host grins. Ah, now you understand. You nod. You don't even know at what. You just nod. Another slice appears on your plate. You do not protest. The flavor deepens with each bite. Smoky skin, crisped ear, a strip of cheek layered with fat and flesh and spice. You're vaguely aware that someone is singing again, but the meat is louder. The flavor fills your ears, your eyes, your memories. You forget your own name and accept that this boar may now live inside you spiritually. Then the apple is removed from its mouth, sliced, passed around. It tastes like pork. You don't ask how. Someone says the tongue is the best part. You pretend not to hear. The wine flows again, hot this time and mixed with pine resin. It's awful. You drink it anyway. You lean back satisfied, truly satisfied. Then someone stands up and loudly proclaims, "Now let us honor the dead what?" The guests rise. You are dragged upright by sheer social pressure. Slaves carry in baskets of dried petals and small clay lamps. Each guest receives one. The host explains a Roman must remember the ancestors, even on a night of indulgence. You're led out into a courtyard. The air is cool, crisp. Stars blink above the roofline. The floor is stone scattered with old ashes. You kneel. You place your lamp. You scatter petals. You mumble a name. Any name. A name of someone who once existed, who might now understand the torment of boiled figs and eel pudding. Beside you, a man is openly sobbing. Behind you, the parrot mutters something indecent. You return to the dining room. It's changed. The lights are lower. The music has stopped. The food is gone. Now there is only silence, and a single glistening cube of something on your plate. You don't know how it got there. You poke it. It wobbles. The guest beside you leans over and whispers, "Sea cucumber jelly." Final test. You smile weakly. I thought the final test was the boar. She shakes her head. There's always one more. You try a bite. It has the texture of boiled cartilage and the taste of bitter salt. You do not cry. You do not scream. You are beyond that now. You swallow. You wait. The host lifts a small bell, rings it once. Enough, he says. You exhale. A servant helps you to your feet. Your legs protest. Your knees creak like ancient ships. Your stomach whimpers softly. The air smells of oil and history. Someone hands you a sprig of rosemary, for memory, they say, or to ward off indigestion. You tuck it behind your ear. You begin to shuffle toward the exit. You have made it. But before you reach the door, the host calls out, "One last thing." Of course. He holds up a jar. Dried peacock tongues. For the road. Everyone laughs. You accept one. It's tiny, crispy, dusty with salt. You eat it. It tastes like victory. You step outside and immediately realize you're still inside. Another room, another chamber. You're not sure if you've been here before or if it's just identical to the last 5 rooms. Marble floors, painted ceilings, a parrot or maybe a ghost of one somewhere behind you muttering, "Marcus, no, the fresh air you'd hoped for, not here." Instead, a sweet, heavy perfume wafts in, waves burnt myrrh, wilted lilies, and pickled onions. A servant nods respectfully and gestures toward a low bench beside a bubbling fountain. You sit, or rather you collapse. Your toga tightens against your ribs like a jealous snake. You consider tearing it open. You don't, yet. Then, as if summoned by your discomfort, the next course arrives. You laugh, not because it's funny, because it's still going. It's a custard, not a nice one. The surface is wrinkled like ancient parchment. It jiggles like something that should not jiggle. It's made of eggs, fish stock, honey, and pepper. You know this because someone tells you cheerfully, they serve it to senators on trial. A comfort food. You take a bite. You learn what regret tastes like. A senator nearby whispers, "It reminds me of my mother's kisses." You vow never to meet his mother. The custard is followed by silence. Not a pause, more like an intermission. Guests shift in place. Some breathe deeply. One removes his sandals and massages his own feet with an olive branch. You don't ask. A small orchestra enters. 2 flutes, 1 harp, a man rubbing the rim of a glass bowl filled with vinegar. The sound they make is haunting, melancholic, like the music you'd imagine playing during a funeral for spoiled lentils. The host reappears. He doesn't walk, he glides. Or maybe your vision's just doubling. "My friends," he says, arms open, "you have dined beyond Rome tonight. You have dined into legend," polite clapping. Someone burps. Another claps just for that. And now, he gestures the palate test. A blindfold is placed over your eyes. You tense. You hear laughter. You hear trays. You smell cheese, no pine, no fermented peach. A spoon touches your lips. "Open," a servant says softly. You do. It's warm and cold and gritty and sour. "What was it you ask after swallowing?" "Ox brain mixed with snow," comes the reply. "With fig resin." You nod. Of course it was. You're fed another bite. This one is sweet dates and honey, but there's an aftertaste of iron. "Boiled beetroot wine," someone says, delighted. The blindfold comes off. You blink in the low light. The guests around you are all at different stages of confusion. One man is giggling into his soup. A woman is playing with her garum dish like it's finger paint. And yet the next course arrives. It's called the Emperor's Surprise. There's no explanation. It's a meatball, large, perfectly round. Sitting in a sauce that smells like 20 cloves of garlic had a midlife crisis. You cut it open. Inside another meatball. You cut that one open. Inside a quail egg. Inside the egg, a raisin. Inside the raisin, no one knows. Probably another meatball. You eat it all. You've stopped asking questions. The flavor is confusing. Layers of spice texture and moral compromise. The host is beaming. It represents the empire, he says. Every flavor, every region, every secret inside another. You nod. You think you're crying. You're not sure anymore. A slave approaches with a hot towel. You press it to your face and inhale the scent of thyme and vinegar. You feel reborn, briefly. And then the philosophical man from earlier appears beside you again. He sits cross-legged on the floor. What he asks slowly is the nature of fullness. You stare at him. He stares at you. Someone nearby whispers, "Historians still debate this." You sigh. Then the lights dim further. A bell rings. 3 times. A final tray appears. Wooden, plain. On it a single round biscuit. Dry, cracked, unassuming. "Hardtack," the host says, "as eaten by Roman sailors." The entire room groans in unison. You break it in half. It splinters like a rock. You taste it. It tastes like dust, regret, and possibly floor. You chew. Slowly, your jaw cramps. You swallow. The host raises a goblet. "To the beginning," he says, "because in Rome a true meal never ends." You drink, not because you want to, but because you must. Your jaw is sore from that sailor's biscuit. You try to stretch it subtly, but it clicks audibly, and someone across the room mistakes it for a signal to raise another toast. To the biscuit, they shout, voice cracking. To surviving it, someone else responds. To teeth adds a third, holding up a small molar in triumph. It might be his. You hope it's his. The host sits at last on a carved ivory stool shaped like a lion. He looks pleased and slightly unhinged. "You've all performed admirably," he says, "and because you've made it this far, you've earned the nightcap of philosophers." You were afraid he'd say something like that. The music slows. A low, droning hum from a long pipe begins a sound that feels like it's coming from inside your own ears. The walls sweat candlelight. The air turns thick with the scent of sage lemon peel and a faint bitterness that smells like wet copper. The next cup arrives. It's not wine, it's something darker, bitter, earthy, almost metallic. The servant says it softly, fermented chicory root and crushed snail shell, boiled with laurel oil and pine pitch. You nod. You've stopped flinching. You sip. It tastes like a punishment, or a memory of one. Like someone tried to make a tea out of grave soil in old medicine cabinets. The host lifts his own cup. To the stomachs of gods and the intestines of mortals, everyone drinks, except the parrot. The parrot, now eerily silent, stares. You briefly wonder if it's dead or just emotionally finished. The host continues. Now let us philosophize. A man stands wobbling. He adjusts his toga drops. His scroll forgets it entirely and begins. What is hunger, he says, arms outstretched. Is it absence or potential? Is a full man less of a man than a hungry one? A woman responds from across the room. Hunger is identity. Without it, we are just digestion. A third voice, sleepy and slurred. Then what is thirst? Love's shadow, replies someone with absolutely no hesitation. A servant accidentally drops a plate. No one reacts. You look at your plate. There's a new item on it. It appeared without sound, like a ghost or a tax bill. A black egg, boiled, cracked slightly, sitting in a puddle of sweet vinegar and something reddish you cannot name. You peel it. The inside is green-gray. You look up. No one else is questioning this. You bite. It tastes like smoke iron and childhood trauma. A senator coughs and says, reminds me of military camp. You don't ask how. The lights flicker again. The musicians are now playing a slow circular tune. It feels like you're being rocked back and forth, not physically, but existentially. The next course is served on a slate. 3 items: a roasted fig stuffed with garlic paste, a slice of cold tongue curled like a question mark, and a cube of cheese soaked in wine until it turned purple. No one explains anything anymore. You just eat. The fig is sharp and sweet. The garlic hits like betrayal. The tongue is chewy and oddly tender. The cheese crumbles like old secrets. The guest beside you is quietly quoting Virgil. You are not okay. Then a strange buzzing. A man with a small covered cage walks into the room. He unveils it. Bees. Not free. Just buzzing. He places a bowl of honey beside the cage and whispers, "Desert tribute." The host nods. A symbol. Sweetness caged, pleasure with stingers. You are offered a spoon of the honey. It is incredible. Warm, spiced with saffron, slightly bitter at the edges. For a moment you are transported. Your eyes close. You forget your bloating, your mental fatigue, your lingering sardine shame. Then a man beside you dips a fig in it and ruins the moment by saying, "This tastes like my ex-wife." You return. The host claps. "Who would like to wrestle a goose?" he asks. You are sure this is a joke. It is not. A small goose is brought in flapping and honking, wearing a tiny wreath of laurels. Guests cheer. 2 men rise drunk, flushed toga, trailing like defeated banners, and begin circling the goose. The goose hisses. One lunges. The goose evades. The other stumbles. The goose bites. Someone yells, "He's down," like it's the Colosseum. You sip more of the chicory brew. The goose wins. Of course it does. It's crowned with a date. The music swells. You stare at the far wall. The fresco there seems to depict your exact face. Confused, slightly ill, existentially unraveling. Then the servants begin laying out small bowls. Soup, at last. Warm, simple. Clear broth with lentils, herbs, and a soft boiled egg floating on top. It smells peaceful. You eat. You are reborn. The warmth fills your chest, your limbs. You breathe deeper. You sit straighter. You briefly believe in the Republic again. You are also very aware that this might be the calm before another culinary storm. And you'd be right. Because the next dish, fermented duck feet. The soup's magic lasts approximately 47 seconds. You're mid-sigh halfway through, believing again in the beauty of warm broth and simple lentils when a new plate is placed before you. The server bows low, hands trembling not from reverence, you suspect, but from sheer overexposure to the fumes of Roman fine dining. On the plate, 3 duck feet, pink, wrinkled, curled, resting in a sticky pool of garum and fig syrup like they died in a particularly confusing accident at a dessert factory. You stare. They do not blink, but they feel like they should. They're fermented, says the man next to you, uninvited, for 6 days, in a clay jar, buried next to a cursed statue. You look at him. He does not elaborate. The host is watching now, so are the guests, so is the goose. You pick one up with 2 fingers, it jiggles in defiance. You lift it to your mouth. The aroma, some unholy union of sour plum pickled anchovy and wet laundry, hits first. You bite. It's slippery, it's crunchy, it's rubbery and stringy and inexplicably sweet. The cartilage cracks slightly. The skin peels back like it was waiting for this moment all its life. You chew, because that's all you know how to do anymore. You swallow. A cheer goes up, you do not cheer. Someone nearby offers you another. You decline with a soft, dignified grunt. The man to your left swallows his 3rd duck foot and says with tears in his eyes, "My father would be proud." A servant clears your plate before you can stare at it too long and begin hearing whispers. Then another shift. The lighting dims again, and a group of children enter dressed as tiny senators, their faces painted white, each holding a scroll. They begin chanting in unison. It's a recipe, in verse. And to the tripe add crushed almonds and vinegar, stir till it moans. You're not sure whether to applaud or flee. A guest near the front claps rhythmically, keeping time like it's a gladiator anthem. Another passes out. The chant ends. The children file out in silence. Someone sighs. You think it was you. Then a new round of wine is poured, honeyed mead aged in goat leather. You sip. It tastes like the inside of a beehive during tax season. And then it hits you. Not the wine. The realization you've been eating for hours, days, generations. Time is irrelevant. Your ancestors are watching. You can feel it. One of them whispers, "We were proud until the duck feet." Then dessert comes back. Not a dessert, the dessert. A sphere. Glass-like. Shimmering. Balanced on a silver spoon like a jewel stolen from Neptune's crown. It's a blown sugar orb filled with rosewater pine nuts and a sliver of sea urchin. You blink. Yes, sea urchin. You ask why. Symbolism, says the nearest server. Delicacy trapped inside danger, or perhaps danger wrapped in delicacy. You nod. Of course, you place it gently in your mouth. It shatters. A rush of sweetness, brine, floral perfume, grit. Something sharp cuts your gum. You bleed quietly. You sip wine. The host stands visibly moved. History, he declares, is not made in battle. It is made in kitchens, in stomachs, in you. The room erupts in applause. You applaud too. You are not sure who you are anymore. A man hands you a candle. You'll need this, he says. For what? The final offering. You're ushered outside again through a narrow stone corridor into a small garden courtyard. The stars above are clearer now. Real even. The wind brushes your face like an old friend finally finding you at the worst possible moment. In the center of the garden, a small altar. You're instructed to light the candle, place it on the stone, and whisper one word that sums up your experience. You stare at the flame. You whisper mercy. Someone whispers garum. Another more. A slave bows and hands you a cloak, wool heavy embroidered with olives and fish. A gift. A badge of survival. You drape it over your shoulders. It smells faintly of saffron and goat. The host meets you at the gate. He clasps your shoulder. You did well, he says. You nod. He smiles, then leans in close. There's breakfast at dawn. You do not scream, but you think about it. You don't remember walking back in. Maybe you never left. The room seems larger now, or maybe emptier. Several couches have been abandoned, their pillows wilted and wine-stained. Plates rest like fallen shields after a battlefield. Bowls of rosewater sit untouched, petals curling inward like exhausted flowers. You are handed a cushion. You sit. A servant places a warm, damp cloth over your forehead. Another places a bowl beside you, just water. Cold, silent, real, you stare at it. This is your salvation. You dip your fingers in. You press them to your eyes. For a moment, you are a person again. And then the music starts, one last time. A slow dirge played on 2 lyres and a reed flute soft and breathy like wind through old doors. The sound of history leaking through the cracks in the mosaic floor. The host steps into the circle of remaining light. His robe has changed now, deeper crimson patterned with gold olive branches and coiled serpents. He lifts his cup. "Let us end as the ancients did," he says with a dream. "You brace yourself." But instead of food, a scroll is passed around. A guest begins to read. A myth, a tale of Bacchus lost in the desert, rescued by a drunken tortoise who convinced a cloud to rain wine. The story makes no sense. It doesn't need to. You let the words wash over you like warm oil. You lean back. The cushion swallows you. A bowl is passed. This one filled with something dark and grainy. Dates no seeds, maybe. You don't eat it. No one does. It's ceremonial. The flute fades. The lyre plucks its final note. The host stands very still. He closes his eyes. He breathes. And so do you. Another servant enters. He carries what looks like a bundle of paper. But it's not paper. It's thin slices of dried cow stomach stacked like scrolls and tied with licorice root. Someone reaches for one. You do not. You've reached the summit of this mountain, and there are no more flags to plant. A voice nearby whispers, "The Romans believed that digestion was an act of discipline." You nod slowly. "Then I must be a soldier." They laugh, or cry, or both. You can't tell. And now the host approaches you directly. You tense. He bows. He holds out a bowl. Empty. For reflection, he says, "You take it." You stare inside. Nothing. Just a few smudges of wine. A fig seed. A curl of saffron. But somehow it holds the entire evening. You place it down gently. Another guest is snoring now. Loudly, comfortably. Someone else is humming the sea cucumber song from earlier. The parrot lets out one last whisper. No. Then goes silent forever. And finally, the last cup. Hot milk lightly spiced with nutmeg and fennel. The Romans believed it settled the stomach and calmed the soul. You sip. It works. It doesn't undo anything, but it says, "It's over." The host turns to the door, and for the first time since sunset it opens. Moonlight spills across the floor. "Thank you," he says, "for your bravery, your appetite, and your silence." You rise. Your legs hold. Barely. The guests walk together. Some arm in arm, some barefoot, some humming. All changed. You step into the night. The sky is thick with stars. The wind is real again, and so are you. Behind you the door shuts quietly. You don't look back, because no one survives a Roman feast the same. But somehow you did. You don't know how long you've been walking or whether the moon above is real or just the eye of another dish waiting to be served. But your feet are moving bare, aching, silent. The night air brushes your skin like silk soaked in vinegar. You're not quite cold, but your body no longer belongs to you. It belongs to Rome now, and Rome is not done. A servant approaches from the shadows, not the house staff from earlier, but an older man in a plain brown robe. His face is lined, serious, serene in a way that makes you nervous. He holds out a cup. Not bronze, not silver, just clay. Unglazed, cracked. You take it. The liquid inside is cloudy, murky. It smells like mushrooms, bay leaf, and regret. "Medicinal broth," the man says. To rebalance the humors, you sip. It's warm, not bad, but not good either. Somewhere between soup and punishment. It settles in your stomach like a cautious diplomat negotiating peace after a civil war. This, he says, is the final meal. You nod even as a tray appears beside him. On it, boiled roots, parsnip, turnip, carrot, each cut into perfect cubes arranged in concentric circles. You've eaten flamingo tongues and fermented duck feet tonight. Somehow this is the most unnerving thing yet. They must be chewed 32 times each, he says. You pick up a parsnip cube. It's lukewarm, soft, slightly sweet. You chew, slowly, dutifully, 1, 2, 3. Around you others do the same. It feels like a ritual, like a secret order of broken diners reciting a mantra through their molars. By the time you reach 28, your jaw aches again. You swallow. The turnip waits. The man nods once and disappears. You're not surprised. A distant gong sounds. Soft footsteps echo through the garden path behind you. A group of musicians walks by, slowly carrying no instruments, just silence. They sit. They wait. They look at you like you're supposed to join. You don't. You return to your table, your original couch somehow reset. The table now holds a single item, a plate of ashes, just ashes. Next to it a peeled lemon. The host returns. Quiet now, sober even. In Greece, he says, they end the meal with burnt offerings. In Egypt with honey and silence. In Rome, he gestures. A reminder that all things end, even taste. He takes a pinch of the ash, places it on his tongue. So does the senator beside you. So does the goose handler. So finally do you. It tastes like char and time and memory. You bite into the lemon. It burns, and then cleans. You close your eyes. When you open them, the host is gone. And the final dish has arrived. You're not sure how. You didn't hear it placed. You didn't see who brought it. But it's there. It's a large white egg, painted with gold lines, sitting in a bowl of ice. Not snow ice. Real chipped glistening. Imported from the Alps. You touch the egg. It's cold. Too cold. You tap it. It cracks. Inside a yolk dyed blue with indigo, floating in a small pocket of saffron gel and black pepper oil. You're told to sip it, not eat. You do. It tastes ancient, like a recipe older than fire, older than Rome. Someone next to you whispers, "This is how the gods dream." You believe them. You put the egg down. The lights dim. One by one torches are snuffed. The moon moves across the floor. You lie back, not to sleep, not to rest, just to be. You've done it. You have eaten everything, and everything has eaten you. Dawn is near, though you haven't seen the sky in what feels like years. The air inside the house has thinned. The torches are out. Only small oil lamps remain flickering like dying thoughts. You are not full, not hungry, not awake, not asleep. You are suspended. Somewhere behind you, someone sings. A lullaby, a prayer. You don't turn to look. You don't need to. The floor beneath your bare feet feels warm now, not from fire, but from the sheer memory of heat. You rise again. It's not over. A final procession begins. A servant, blank-eyed from sleeplessness or self-preservation, leads a small group of guests to a final chamber, a digestorium, a place of rest, of transition, of ceremonial closure. At least that's what they claim. The room is round its ceiling, domed with stars painted in lapis lazuli and soot. At the center, a low stone platform. Around it, bowls, trays, steam. This is not a room for eating. It's for relieving. Not in the vulgar sense. In the Roman way, to purge, to soothe, to reflect. A gentle voice speaks. This is the station of balance, where opposites are dissolved. What you kept you now give back. You're guided to a shallow bowl of hot milk infused with rue fennel and ash. You sip it. It tastes like endings, bitter and warm. Then a single fig is placed in your palm. Soft, wrinkled, nothing inside but sweetness. You eat it and weep a little. The host appears once more, not dressed in finery now, but in a plain tunic, barefoot, hair damp. He bows, not to impress, not for theater, for truth. "My friends," he says quietly, "you have crossed the Rubicon of the tongue. And what lies on the other side is silence. No one applauds. No one laughs." He kneels. So do the guests. This is not performance anymore. A young servant carries in a scroll. It is unrolled, held up, and read aloud. When we eat, we remember we are earth. When we feast, we remember we are story. When we fast, we remember we are flame. And then the scroll is burned. Right there, in a small clay bowl. The ash spirals upward and vanishes into the dark, and you breathe. And finally, you are led back through the house, through the atrium now quiet, past the statue of Hercules with olives stuffed in his ears, past the bowl of forgotten rosewater, past the ghost of your appetite. The door is open. You step out. The morning is pale and perfect. The breeze carries nothing but air. Someone walks beside you, a guest like you. You exchange no words. You hear birds. You remember your own name. You touch your stomach and it doesn't protest. You smile faintly. Behind you, the house is silent, but you know it's still watching, still cooking, waiting for the next one. And you will carry this feast with you forever, not in your gut, but in your bones, because you have dined in ancient Rome, and you have survived. You don't speak for a long time. None of the guests do. You walk together slowly like soldiers returning from an invisible war. Down the stone path, leading away from the domus, past the fountains and garden statuary, where last night you thought you saw the statue of Minerva move, though now you're not so sure it was a statue, or that it ever moved, or that you ever stopped. And just as the horizon pinks with the first light of day, you hear it. A knock, a deliberate, gentle knock. Not at a door, but at a wall. A concealed panel opens at the side of the garden gate. A boy slips out, barefoot, grinning, with a basket on his shoulder. Inside, bread, but not just any bread. Breakfast bread. Simple, unleavened, barely salted, soft. The kind a Roman slave might eat before dawn. The kind a farmer might tuck into his tunic before walking out to plow the fields. No gilded crust. No peacock feathers. Just warmth, grain, and rest. The boy passes the basket to you. You don't ask his name. You tear off a piece. You pass the basket. The others do the same. No one speaks. The bread is still warm. It crumbles in your mouth, soft and yielding. It tastes like sleep, like soil, like something that doesn't need to prove anything. You chew slowly, and then a jug, water, no herbs, no minerals, no crushed pearl or vinegar, just cold, clean water. You drink. You don't realize you're crying until you see the reflection ripple. Someone behind you whispers, "This is the first honest thing we've tasted." Another nods. It's the only thing that didn't ask anything in return. You sit, right there on the stone ledge beside the garden. The others join you. A bird chirps. The breeze carries the faint scent of cypress and dust. And for the first time in hours, maybe ever, you are not waiting for the next dish. There is no next dish. This is the after. This is what it feels like to not eat. A few guests lie down. One curls up under his woolen cloak. Another hums the melody from last night's story about Bacchus and the tortoise. Someone chuckles, softly. The host reappears. He carries nothing, no tray, no cup. Just a scroll tucked beneath one arm and a look of total contentment. He sits beside you. "I lied," he says after a moment. You glance over. He smiles. "There's always one more course." You groan. He laughs. "But this one, you carry inside." He opens the scroll, blank. The mind, he continues tapping it, remembers differently than the stomach. It edits. It arranges. It forgets the anchovy figs but keeps the peacock tongue. It erases the nausea and leaves only the wonder. He looks at you. And one day, when someone asks you what it was like, you'll say, "It was beautiful." He stands, dusts his robe, and walks away. No one follows. Because now everyone understands. The final course isn't a dish, it's memory. You lie back. The sun touches your cheek. A breeze rustles the laurel branches overhead. You hear sandals crunching on gravel as guests drift away one by one. No farewells, just peace. You stay behind a little longer. Just you, the bread, and the silence. You look down at your hands. They are still trembling, but less than before. You've been fed by Rome, and Rome never feeds you without changing you. You were a guest. Now you are something else. Someone who has tasted the empire not through conquest or currency or law, but through the absurd sacred theater of food. And that makes you a citizen of something deeper, something older. You rise and leave. The street outside the villa is quiet. No carts, no soldiers, no market cries, just the faint sound of a broom sweeping somewhere far off and a dog barking at nothing. The city, like you, is only just waking. You walk with care now. Not because your stomach protests, though it does, but because you're afraid the earth might still be swaying beneath you. The Roman stones beneath your feet feel less like a road and more like a reflection of your body, layered, worn, uneven, still holding the heat of the previous night. Your toga is wrinkled, your sandals dusty, your mind raw. The meal is over, but it's not behind you. It's still moving through you in ways that go beyond digestion. You can feel it curling in the crevices of your memory like garum in a clay jar, fermenting something deeper than flavor. Ahead, a public fountain bubbles lazily. You stop. Cupping water in your palms, you rinse your face, your mouth. You spit, then rinse again. You are not trying to wash away the taste. That's impossible. You're just signaling to yourself you made it, you survived. And then a passerby greets you. "Long night," he asks, with the kind of grin only a Roman who's never been to that house could give. You nod slowly. "Dinner with Senator Calvus," you say. That's the host's name you finally remember. The man's smile falters. "Calvus," he repeats. "You poor bastard." Then he walks on. You don't call him back. You don't need to. You've earned that nod. That look of quiet recognition. He knows what you know. You pass a bakery next. The smell of real bread wafts into the street, yeast ash wood smoke. The kind of bread that doesn't pretend to be anything other than bread. You inhale, and for the first time in hours, your stomach feels calm. You smile. Then you hear voices. Two women gossiping by a stall, voices sharp but warm, like crows sharing secrets. "And I told her if the lamprey makes your hair fall out, that's on you, not the cook." Laughter. You want to laugh too, but you're still afraid laughter might trigger something. You keep walking. The forum is still a few blocks away, but you take the long route. You want to delay your return to normalcy. You want to savor the world as it is after. A child runs past you barefoot, holding a pomegranate like a treasure. He glances back and grins. His teeth are stained red. He doesn't know about flamingo tongues or duck jelly or the riddle hidden in a raisin, and you envy him. But only a little, because there is something about being invited into the absurdity of Rome's most intimate theater, its table, that leaves you changed. You cross a bridge. Beneath you, the Tiber glints in the early sun, sluggish but alive, like you. You lean over the stone railing, breathing in the river's scent, fish silt, and the faint memory of wine poured in libation. Your fingers tap the railing unconsciously, mimicking the rhythm of the children's chant from the feast. In vinegar they boil the bone, in honey they hide the sting. You stop, you close your eyes, and then you whisper the rest. What's left is neither beast nor bread, but empire on the tongue instead. You don't know where you learned it, you just know it's true. Your feet keep walking, but your mind stays behind a moment longer, watching yourself reclined on that couch, staring into a bowl of something unidentifiable, deciding whether survival was worth the next bite. It was, because now you know. You've touched the edge of Roman civilization, not through marble or military, but through pickled roots and comedy disguised as cuisine. You arrive at your own doorway, a modest home, quiet, safe. You open the door, inside silence, familiar things. An empty cup on the table, a fig drying on the sill. You remove your cloak and fold it. You sit, and only then do you let yourself think, would I do it again? You don't answer out loud, but deep in your belly something shifts and smiles. The day passes in a haze. You sleep for a while, deep, dreamless, the kind of sleep that comes only after your body has experienced something so overwhelming that even your soul agrees it needs to shut down. When you wake, the sun is already low in the sky again. Your limbs ache in ways that have nothing to do with movement. Your mouth is dry, your stomach neutral, not empty, not full, just quiet, for now. You rise, drink water, and eat a fig from your table. The fig is simple, sun-warmed, and honest. It doesn't whisper secrets. It doesn't demand attention. It is the first food you've eaten that doesn't carry an aftershock, and you're grateful for it. Outside, Rome has returned to its usual rhythm. Markets bustle. Wheels roll across cobblestones. Vendors shout over each other. The chaos of empire continues. You walk among it, but you feel apart from it. Like a man who's just returned from a pilgrimage no one else remembers taking. Because they haven't. Because they wouldn't dare. You overhear a man praising his butcher for finally getting in some decent goat spleen. You nod with distant respect. You understand now. You've eaten worse. You've eaten more. You've survived Senator Calvus's table. And that in Rome is a mark of status. Even if no one speaks of it openly. At the baths, someone recognizes you, not by name, not even by face, but by posture. By the way you wince slightly when someone says, "Dinner party." "You were there," the man asks. You don't need to say yes. He nods solemnly. "You made it. Impressive." You laugh softly. "I'm not sure that's the word." "No," he replies, "but it's the one we use." And just like that, you are part of the club. The quiet fraternity of survivors. The guests who know. As the evening stretches across the city, casting everything in long golden light, you wander toward the Tiber again. Something draws you there. The river is moving faster today. A cool breeze rolls off its surface, and you close your eyes to feel it. You lean on the railing, hands resting gently, mind drifting. And that's when you hear it. Behind you. A voice. Light. Familiar. You left before dessert number 22. You turn. The woman in green from the feast stands a few paces back, arms folded, smile playing on her lips. You smile too. "I left while I could still walk." She shrugs. Wise. Though the candied eel bones were surprisingly poetic. You raise your eyebrows. That's not a sentence I ever expected to hear. She walks to your side, leans on the stone. "So, what will you remember?" You pause. The question isn't casual. Not after that experience. "I'll remember the bread you say, at the end. The honest bread." She nods. "Good choice." "And you?" She tilts her head. The silence. You understand. The wind rises. The river speaks in ripples. Below, a boy tosses pebbles into the current. A dog barks in the distance. Rome breathes. "Will you go again?" you ask. She smiles. "Not yet." You nod. You walk together for a while, no destination, no plan. Just two survivors of a dinner that wasn't really about food. A dinner that was about control power, absurdity, art mortality, and above all, performance. Because the Romans didn't just eat to live, they ate to show they could, to prove their bodies could endure what others couldn't. That their empire extended even into their bellies. That decadence taken far enough becomes a kind of discipline. By the time you part ways, night has fallen again. A single star flickers overhead. You return to your home. You light a lamp. You sit at your table. You write a single sentence on a scrap of papyrus. He who dines with Rome dines with all of her. You don't sign it. You don't need to. You fold the paper and place it under your plate, because one day someone else will be invited. And when they ask you what to expect, you'll hand them that note and say nothing else. In the days that follow, something changes. You walk differently now, not slower, just quieter. More aware of the weight in your steps. The weight of knowledge, maybe, or the lingering heft of boar fat and eel pudding fermenting inside your subconscious. You think about food more than you'd like to admit. Not with hunger, with curiosity. What is it that makes a feast like that possible? What machinery of empire must exist to allow a single evening to involve 12 kinds of wine, 4 species of bird, and 3 different philosophical arguments about lentils? And more disturbingly, why did you keep eating? You aren't alone in wondering. Word spreads not by proclamation, but by posture. People begin to recognize each other in the streets the same way veterans do. There's a look, a slight squint, a tilt of the head when someone mentions dinner. It binds you. One afternoon you receive a scroll, unmarked. Inside a short message, there will be another. You fold it calmly, burn it without flinching. You're not going back, not soon anyway. Instead, you visit the market. You run your hands across simple ingredients: barley, onion, lentils. You smell wild mint. You hold a loaf of hard bread and smile, really smile, for the first time since the candied goose hearts. The baker recognizes you. You've seen the deep table, he says quietly. You nod. He offers you a roll. Fresh, still warm. No oil, no honey, no irony, just bread. You take it. It's more than enough. You sit under a fig tree and eat slowly, carefully, with reverence, as if your body is now something sacred, something learned, not owned, not ruled, not even by appetite, but understood. Your memories of the feast grow less vivid but more symbolic. The egg game becomes a metaphor for luck. The sardine challenge becomes about endurance. Even the jelly of sea cucumber becomes somehow a story of resilience. Historians may one day debate whether these meals ever really happened, whether the stories are exaggerated, whether anyone would dare eat parrot and honey while a dwarf juggled figs behind a curtain of steam. Let them debate. You know the truth, because you were there, and there is no forgetting it. One night you host a dinner, a small one, 3 friends, flatbread, olives, lentils with garlic and thyme, nothing fermented, nothing pickled in despair. They eat, they laugh, they thank you, and as they rise to leave, one asks, "Didn't you used to eat more extravagantly?" You smile. "I still do," you say, "just not all at once." After they go, you clean the dishes, you fold the cloth napkins, you pour yourself a single cup of water, and as you sip it slowly, you whisper, "Marcus, yes, the parrot would be proud." Weeks pass. Seasons begin to shift. The heat of Roman summer recedes slowly, like a lion retreating into the shadows, still powerful, still dangerous, but content to rest. The evenings are cooler now, the sky gentler. The city breathes a different rhythm, and so do you. You don't think about the feast as often anymore, at least not directly, but it lives in your gestures, in how you chew more slowly, how you ask where the fish came from before tasting it, how you now sniff wine before drinking it, even if it's cheap and barely fermented. You laugh more softly at jokes about fermented owl eggs, and you're the only one who knows what that means. It's inside you now. Not the food, not physically, but the awareness of how much effort and absurdity it takes to sustain an empire's appetite, of how gluttony, when dressed in ceremony, becomes sacred, of how taste is both survival and seduction. One evening you're invited to another dinner. This one simple. A merchant you once sold parchment to, nothing lavish. He says, "Bring only your appetite." You bring curiosity instead. There are 6 guests, all older, all from the edges of the city. One is a former soldier who fought in Gaul. another a retired actor with shaky hands. The food is bread, cheese, wine. Grapes, a roasted beet, one dish of salted sardines. You pause at that. You pick one up, you chew slowly, you smile. The others eat noisily, without shame, without theater. One man tells a joke that no one really understands, but everyone laughs at anyway. Another guest spills wine. No one applauds, no one claps. They just hand him a towel and keep talking. You realize how much you've missed this. The normal, the human, the unperformed. After the meal, you sit on the steps of the host's house drinking water, listening to crickets. The moon is round. Your sandals are dusty. Your hands smell faintly of garlic and lemon. You've eaten better meals, I'm sure your host says. You shake your head. I've eaten larger meals, not necessarily better. He grins. You know he says they say the best Roman banquets were the ones with no witnesses. You chuckle, or no survivors. He laughs loudly, slapping his thigh. You do know something. You walk home under stars, and for the first time you don't feel full or empty, just balanced. You pass a column that has stood since before your grandfather was born. You touch it lightly. It's cool, solid, unmoving. You, on the other hand, are still changing. Inside your house, everything is quiet. You light a small lamp. You sit, and as you peel an orange, your first in days, you realize the feast has left one gift behind: stillness. Not silence, stillness. The kind that only arrives after chaos. The kind that lets you enjoy one bite without needing the next. You eat a slice. You taste everything. The sun that fed the tree, the worker who plucked it, the distance it traveled, the hand that gave it to you, and you close your eyes. Not in exhaustion, but in gratitude, for having known too much, and now knowing what to leave behind. Not long after you receive another invitation. This one is different. No seal, no crest, just a thin strip of parchment tucked between the folds of your window curtain as though it arrived by wind. It reads, "For those who have dined with Rome, there is one table left. Come not to eat but to understand. No time, no place, but somehow you know where to go. You dress plainly. You leave before dawn. The city is still sleeping. Market stalls, shuttered fountains still casting steam into the cool air. You pass a statue of Apollo missing one eye, a sleeping stray dog curled in its shadow, and finally arrive at a door you've never seen but recognize. It opens for you without a knock. Inside, silence. No torches, no tapestries, no servants, just one room. At the center, a table, stone, unadorned, empty. You approach. There are no couches, no silverware, no food. Just a folded piece of cloth and a small clay bowl. You sit. A figure is already there. You didn't see them arrive. An older woman. Gray hair wrapped in a twist, skin like cracked parchment. She doesn't speak. She pushes the bowl toward you. Inside water, clear, still. She motions for you to look into it. And you do. You expect reflection. But you see a table. The table. Calvus's table. The one you left behind but never fully escaped. It's not a memory. It's a retelling. You see yourself biting into the first egg. You see the servant warning you about the oysters. The dancer falling in silence. The goose victorious. You see guests you didn't remember. Details your stomach had overwritten. The child jugglers. The steam over the eel. The gleam of lemon oil on the boar's teeth. The woman speaks, one word, digest, and you do, not with your mouth, but with your mind. The vision shifts, the table is gone, replaced now with an open scroll, a diagram, the architecture of a meal, spices traced from India, wine routes through Hispania, sardines caught off the coast of Mauritania. You see that a feast is not just a table, it is a map. It is conquest translated into flavor. It is power swallowed, digested, and transformed into memory. The woman closes the bowl. The water darkens. She says, "Now you see." You nod, because you do. It wasn't about food. It never was. It was about control, display, empire. The meal was Rome itself, served, swallowed, and made palatable by ritual. She stands. You do too. There is nothing more to eat, nothing more to say. But as you leave, she presses something into your hand. A single date. Dried, soft, sweet. You eat it on the walk home. And for the first time, it doesn't remind you of anything else. It just is. And that's enough. The clarity doesn't come all at once. It arrives slowly, like the light at dawn, first as a suggestion, then as something you cannot ignore. You begin to notice things. How every Roman home keeps at least one jar of garum, no matter how modest. How children are taught not just how to speak, but how to toast. How even the poorest funerals offer bread, wine, and sometimes a small salted fish. Ritual hides in every bite. The city itself is a mouth always consuming grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, olives from Hispania, tongues from everywhere. A meal, after all, is just a reenactment of conquest. And somehow, now that you know this, you're calmer. You no longer eat to be full. You eat to remember. You eat to understand. One morning you find yourself walking the Palatine Hill, alone. Above the noise, a small fig tree casts a crooked shadow over a crumbling column. You sit beneath it and unpack your modest meal: lentils with vinegar and garlic, a bit of goat cheese, a crust of bread still warm from the oven. You chew slowly. There's no performance here, no audience. And yet you feel watched not in fear, but in legacy. You imagine someone in the future, centuries from now, holding a piece of bread and wondering how their ancestors lived. You smile. You hope they never taste the jelly of sea cucumber, but that they always remember the quiet beauty of fig and grain. A child runs past chasing a reed ball. His sandals flap against the dust. He laughs. You hand him the last of your bread. He grins, says nothing, and disappears down the hill. Later, a traveler from the provinces joins you on a bench near the baths. He speaks of trade routes and taxes and weather, then suddenly asks, "Is it true they served ostrich brains at the palace last week?" You nod. He shudders. "I don't think I could eat that." You smile again. "You could." He blinks. "You'd be surprised what the tongue can bear once the mind is made ready." He looks away, quiet for a moment, then says, "And when the meal ends, you shrug." "That depends. For some, it never does." A pause. "For you, you take a long breath." "I think it ended when I stopped asking what came next." He nods slowly. "That sounds like wisdom." "No," you reply. "That sounds like someone who's had too much fermented dormouse." He laughs, and the city goes on. That evening, you light a lamp in your home. Not because you're expecting guests, but because you want the light to fall just right across the bowl of olives you've placed on the table. There's no ceremony to them. No honey, no gold leaf, no dwarf balancing them on his head. Just olives, just peace. You eat one. You remember none of the meal's absurdity, only that for a few strange hours you sat on the edge of empire and tasted what it meant to rule and be ruled through fennel and fire, and the long, strange theater of appetite. You rise, you sleep, and Rome dreams on. It begins again, but differently. You're older now. The feast is years behind you, long enough that when someone mentions Senator Calvus, you feel a strange affection, the way one might feel toward an old injury that aches in the rain. You no longer speak of the dishes. You rarely name them aloud. But in quiet corners of your mind, you still remember their textures, their ambition, their audacity. And sometimes, when you taste something simple like warm barley or a too-sweet date, you feel it again. The shadow of that night. The memory of gold-gilded boar and peacock feathers wilting in torchlight. But mostly you've moved on. You teach now. Not formally, not at the forum, not behind a podium. You teach with your hands how to break bread without crushing it, how to chew slowly enough to taste the shape of time, how to share figs without dividing their sweetness unevenly. People come to you. Not many, just enough. Travelers, writers, curious minds. Sometimes they ask, "Is it true? Did they really serve goose eggs, stuffed with dormouse livers and honey-glazed locusts?" You nod. You always nod. You tell them what you can. But you never tell them everything. Because the feast wasn't just about food, it was about power, control, surrender. Every bite was a choice, every swallow a submission, every flavor a declaration that you were no longer at the center of your own appetite. And once you learn that, you can never unlearn it. One spring morning, a young woman barefoot, full of questions, asks you if she should attend the next banquet at Calvus's estate. You study her eyes. They're eager, not greedy, not naive. Just curious, ready. You say yes. "But bring a second pair of sandals." She frowns. "For what?" You smile. "You'll understand when you leave." Later you find yourself in your garden. It's small, just a patch of soil, some climbing beans, a lazy rosemary bush that refuses to die. You crush a leaf between your fingers. The scent rises, fresh, sharp, earthy. You think of the end, not of your life, but of the feast, the last sip of milk, the touch of ash on your tongue, the candle that marked not a finish but a return. Back to simplicity, back to silence. That's the truth no one tells the eager guests. The end of the meal is not the end. It is the beginning of digestion, and digestion is its own empire. A slow inner march, a procession of flavors into memory of memory, into identity of identity, into story. That is what remains. Not the sardines, not the custards, not the beet-colored hardtack or the surprisingly tender camel heel, but you. You, the one who walked through it, who chewed the empire and survived it, and lived to plant rosemary again. The wind rustles the leaves. You exhale. You are not hungry. You are not full. You are not waiting for the next course. Because you are the next course. You are what remains. You are the story Rome didn't mean to write but wrote anyway.